Welcome to Higher PhD's Alternate Career Path Success Stories. Higher PhD is a not-for-profit organization that helps graduates with advanced degrees unlock their potentials, and we help them do that by providing them with the resources required to make a success of their careers. Today's show is really a very special one. We have a very important guest to tell us more about his career story. And the aim is to provide you with the emerging trends and opportunities for growth in career paths outside of academia, and also the soft skills that are required to make a success of your career. Our guest today is Julien Herras. Julien started out his career in sociology, but he did not limit himself to his education. His pursuit for the things that he loved led him into photography, audio engineering, and creative design. Currently, he's a lead experience designer at Electronics Arts, and he's going to tell us everything about his career. I'll let him do more of the talking. So you're welcome to our show today, Julien.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'm Julien. Pearl gave a really nice intro there. But my career has definitely been a funny one, if I were to describe it. I grew up as someone who was always interested in the creative field, in arts, in music. And it's been something that I pursued at a really early age. But unfortunately, I guess at that time, so I'm from the Philippines originally, and at that time, the creative field was not necessarily the primary choice for a lot of people in the Philippines. So it was really hard to kind of get the support and the encouragement to pursue those things that I really like doing. So I kind of pursued a lot of this, my knowledge in design and art on the side. I still obviously went the proper academic route. But I kind of pursued a lot of these just as things, as hobbies and as interests that I maintained. Coming into college, that's where I started off in sociology, like you mentioned. And I guess one driving factor behind that was I really was interested in just interactions and talking to people, looking at how I guess people interact with each other, and scaling that up and into sociology. It just gives you a much greater understanding of how our society works, how everything is kind of put together, our beliefs, our values, a lot of that. So that's the main thing that I started pursuing. But then my parents got an opportunity to move to Canada, and I guess I looked at that as a fresh slate for me to start a career or anything really that was more in line with what I wanted to do. So it took a little bit of wayfinding for me, for sure. There was a lot of avenues and different things that I wanted to do in life. So it was almost like I did a sampler when I started my education here. I was really into photography at that time, as a part of just all my creative interests. And I did a certificate in photography to see if that's a path that I could pursue. And I guess I picked a lot of really great concepts there that I apply to even my work this day. And I can say the same for everything that I did. And going after that, I really wanted to get into a well-known creative college here in Vancouver. But I didn't luck out. I didn't have a strong enough portfolio at that time. So, at that point, there was a lot of self-doubt, for sure. I'm not gonna lie about that. So I thought about, hey, maybe this isn't what I should be pursuing. So then I got into audio engineering, because music was also an alternate passion of mine. And then I've had also my own discoveries and reservations after going there. And then I kind of just took a look at my skill set and what I pursued my whole life, and I tried to think about something that could combine all of that. And one thing that I found was a great opportunity was through the world of design. At that time, the design industry was just growing. Most of what people knew about design was the typical design that we know. When we say design, the first thing that comes to mind is usually graphic design, like creating designs for marketing, stuff like that. What we usually know, or what we know of design the past like 10 years before before me starting my education. So I found out that design was a growing industry where there were new fields and new areas that intersected with various other knowledge areas in different sectors. And that's what I found really interesting, because it wasn't now just designing for print or designing for web. There was so much more to design. There was with user experience, there was just like how psychology interacted with the interface, and how users understood different interface from a doorknob to a mobile device or to a game console, right? And all of these are different types of interfaces. And I was just like, that sounds like a great career that could, mesh all of the learnings I have from various areas. Because even if you think about audio, you might wonder, where does audio fall into user experience? It's audio is a big accessibility tool for user experience, for example. Like that's, it's providing more opportunities to create more inclusive design, right? When we're thinking about audio and how we perceive an interface with audio feedback. If you think about photography, the base concepts for photography, which really applies to my role in the creative industry, is just talking about lighting and composition and just base visual concepts that are easily applied across any medium. So if you think about it, if I think about it and go through all the stuff that I tried and I did, it all of it has been useful. So that, I guess that's kind of what shaped where I am right now. It's definitely a lot of trial and error, a lot of figuring stuff out, a lot of really just trying to think, how can I do everything that I want to do without sacrificing anything. So I guess that's the long of it. But I'm happy to dive
really
into more detail.
Yeah, it's really very interesting, right? The fact that you are able to pull together all your experiences and trainings into one particular role that you're doing currently is really very beautiful. Sometimes, people feel like, oh, if I start out in one area, being able to transfer those skills and experiences to new areas is really challenging for a lot of people, right? But you were able to beautifully now merge your background in sociology with your photography, audio design, everything, beautifully. It's really, really inspiring, and it's really amazing. Will you mind sharing with our audience what really helped you, like this journey to self-discovery now, this identifying what you really want to do, like you did, right, and settled for this user design? Like, can you just guide our audience through what the most important pointers for you were to help you to finally decide and settle for where you are at right now?
Yeah, I think for me it was just this is going to be a very vague answer, but for me it's more just the joy of creating. The joy of creating, and also I guess finding the purpose in creation, right? And I that's not to say that art in itself or photography or any of these fields is purposeless, but what I'm trying to say is, working in design, you're creating solutions, and you're creating visuals, you're creating tools that make people's lives easier, that add a lot of value to other people, and a lot of, actually not just other people, a lot of people, because we're talking about your user base, right? We're talking about specifically crafting solutions to not just a person, two people, but a demographic of people, right? And I guess I've always been inspired by the idea of just being able to influence positive change, whether that's with one person or with a group of people or even society. So I was just like, design is kind of, there's a lot of opportunities to do that in design, and design as a growing industry, there's also so many avenues that you could shape yourself into or move into and transition to, starting with that base skill set that you would have as a designer. So for me, I guess I was thinking about the longevity of what I wanted to do. How can I stay creative, and how can I also, be impactful to in the world that I live in, or in the field that I'm working in. And I found design to be a great culmination of that, right? It's if I think about photography, you know, like I can, you know, obviously I can create, you know, emotion, like I guess strike emotion in a viewer looking at a photograph. But to me, I guess I was looking for something that could potentially have a more bigger impact, or an avenue where I can try to influence a bigger impact on things. And that was kind of a big deciding factor for me.
That's really very good. So you, from what he said, you just have to follow your passion, like follow your interests, right? And
Oh,
wherever it leads
absolutely.
you,
Yeah.
you follow where it leads, right?
I think a big pointer to Pearl is just, you know, like not not fearing. And I know this sounds very cliche or very cheesy, but you know, to me it's really just you know, again, trusting that you in yourself have the skills to kind of succeed in that, and really just, you know, not giving up on what really drives you, right? And
Yeah.
you know, to me it was like, took so long to get, you know, to where, you know, I'm doing actually what I really love doing. But you know, I'm glad that I kind of took the time and the risk and all of that to kind of get here. So
Yeah, that's talking about doing what you love. I would like to know, or we would like to know, in your day-to-day role, as in your current role, what do you find most fulfilling? And because you know you're doing what you love, right? So what for you will you say is the most fulfilling aspect of your work? And then what do you find most frustrating?
okay.
Because even when you're doing what you love, there will definitely be some things that, are a bit frustrating. So yeah, can you share that with us, please?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess most exciting or most fulfilling part of my job, I think, is, I can't give just one answer, unfortunately. I
Sure.
think one part of it is being able to see the impact of what you do in a greater in a big, I guess, demographic, big audience. So I'm talking about, you know, I'm working on a game, for example, and then we craft, or we try to smoothen of like a flow of a certain mode, for example, and then we try to push the quality of the visuals. And being able to just go through our Discord channels or look at the comments on Twitter or reviews, and just seeing that immediate response to the stuff that you're doing and how it's affecting a person's experience, right? They're playing your game and they're seeing, you know, like someone calls it out and be like, hey, the UI looks amazing here, this is so much easier to use, or like, I'm actually enjoying this game now, you know, like comments like that. It's a very positive experience for me to see that, you know, it's not just like us in a cave trying to make a game, but it's actually, it's going out to thousands of people, impacting their day. You know, our product is something that they can come back to, you know, every day to kind of, you know, get that dose of dopamine, or get their excitement, or kind of escape from, you know, whatever's weighing them down. So, you know, being able to craft an experience like that, to me is super valuable. And I guess the other, going back to the other exciting part for me, is just I get to create. You know, in my career in gaming, like I've been able to work on animation, photography, like filming stuff. I've been able to do a lot of design, a lot of user interface stuff, just pretty much anything, right? And I think what's great about, especially, you know, the gaming industry being very creative, is there's a lot of opportunity to innovate, right? And a lot of innovation comes from perspectives and ideas that haven't previously existed in that specific industry, or maybe that specific team, right? So now, you know, like I'm coming in to this team and I'm bringing all of these ideas, like, hey, what if we, you know, did something like this, where the lighting hit a player this way and it made it feel super epic, where it's just like, hey, we're just crafting a game, we're just crafting experience, but now like we're getting into the details of, we're creating different ways of making this product look cool and making it look exciting and engaging. So those are what really excite me about what I do. I guess the frustrating part, and for me, the frustration is not really, I wouldn't call it a negative type of frustration.
Mhm.
So the frustration is sometimes as a designer, you'll often run into, you're creating a solution or a visual or a design. And then you have this assumption as a designer, you have your gut thinking, and you have your experience, and you're creating something, and you're like, I know this is going to look good. I know this is going to be amazing. Users are going to love it. But again, that's an assumption, right? And one of the biggest things that is super important in the field of user experience is testing those assumptions and validating those assumptions with your users. And I'll oftentimes run into just the situation where I'm feeling super strong about it. Like I really want it to work. And then I put it out in front of our audience, and our audience is just like, no, this doesn't work for us, or like, this is not the ideal solution that we understand very well. And it's more of a wake-up call. And it's not like, it's frustrating because you weren't able to push for the design that you really wanted to. But then again, you're not making the design for yourself. So that's kind of the wake-up call for me, that it's just like, okay, these are the people that we are making the product for. And, the data and the insights that they have will take priority over any assumption that I will be able to make for a design. And that's, I guess, the frustration, but it's also the reality of things. It's part of the job. And that's why I'm saying it's not really a negative type of frustration.
Yeah. But it's really very interesting, because when you talk about designs now, I personally see your industry, like the gaming industry, to be one of the, would I say, foremost or well advanced places, right, to work when it comes to design. So I'm just like putting myself in the shoes of our audience, and I'm wondering, like, your choice of the gaming industry, was it an intentional choice, or it was just like the default, right? Given all your experiences, that was just the industry that put together all your experiences. And in terms of UX design now, and can you also like talk about other industries as well that people in the audience can fit in, someone who is looking at becoming you, right? Right, becoming someone like you. Like, could you also like speak to maybe other industries apart from gaming, right? And also we want to know if your being in the gaming industry was an intentional decision, or it was just the opportunity that came up or something.
Yeah, definitely. So to answer your first question, it wasn't my first choice to be in the gaming industry. I actually, when I was in school, my ideal job after school was actually to work in medical apps. Like that, again, going back to my, I guess, thirst for being able to make a positive impact. I kind of wanted to work in that space because it was just an industry that was very close to my heart. And it was actually the basis of my grad project. But then the first opportunity that arose for me was gaming. I was very resistant to it at first. But at the same time, I also kind of told myself, I was just like, hey, everyone does need to start from somewhere. And, you need a place to start getting just the experience to be able to move in the opportunities that you want to move into. So I guess a lot of my resistance to gaming was just, I love games. I played games for most of my life, but I always thought about gaming as just, hey, this is just entertainment. Like, it's not valuable, that it's leisure. And that was kind of my mentality for the longest time, even coming into the gaming industry. But I actually had to do just a re-examining of that kind of thinking. And I definitely see gaming in a very different light now, especially like with a pandemic that actually changed so much, because when I realized how much of a positive impact our products were making to people who are isolated, people who are separated from their loved ones, people who are going through a very tough time mentally. I didn't know that gaming and the gaming industries had such a positive impact on those people. And that's where I kind of told myself, hey, like you are making impact in people's lives, just not in the way that you thought you would be, right? And again, a lot of the times that's we do need to go through this examining of what we're doing to really
That's
see,
right.
you know, where is this getting us? What is it was this doing? Is, you know, it might just be in front of us and we're not choosing to see it. So I guess that's my story with gaming. I see a lot of value in it now, and you know, I do enjoy staying in this industry. I guess to answer your second question, UX design as a field is definitely one of the, I guess, widest spanning fields right now. Not just in tech, but overall, really anything that someone is making for users, or someone is making that is not for themselves. Almost any sector that does that, UX is applicable. And if you think about that statement, that's pretty much almost like maybe 70 to 90% of all industries that we have, right? Whether we're creating railroad systems for cities, whether we're creating interactive installations in a museum, or whether we're creating a mobile app, all of these are touch points for a user in a business, right? And that's where user experience comes in. Is now, you know, especially over the past just decade, UX as a field has grown exponentially, because all of these companies, all of these products are starting to see that when we think about the users and what they need, there's better engagement in our products, there's better monetization in our products, there's just, you know, people keep coming back and wanting to use this product, and we see the positive impact to people's lives. They can do things easier, things are more convenient, and more companies are starting to see that. So user experience now more than ever is probably like it, you know, it's like getting to, you know, I don't want to say it's peak, because I don't know how much UX is going to grow, but it's definitely the most I guess presence than it's ever been. And you know, I came from a time where user experience was something that you fought for in a company. You had to fight for support for UX to get the budget, you know, to do testing and research. But now, you know, with all the impact that it's had on all these big companies, everyone kind of wants a piece of the cake. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, user experience spans so many industries. So if it's something that, you know, you're choosing to get into, I don't think you're going to have a shortage of places to go to, right? Because again, you can blend almost any type of industry with UX, right? And you know, even skill sets, different skill sets you may have before. You know, maybe I'll keep using the railway example. You know, like maybe you work at a railway company, and then like now you want to try to figure out how you can improve systems for users. Now you get to like take a step back, look at, hey, who is using this specific railway system? What's the demographic? What is their day-to-day behavior? What is their journey coming from when they leave the house, walking into the train station, you know, tapping into the ticketing booth? Like, what does that entire process look like? And now you're going to examine that as a set of data, and then you're going to try to find where users having friction points, and you're going to try to identify solutions there. So if you look at that formula, you'll be able to find so many areas you can apply that to. And, you know, I'm not trying to distill user experience as a field into that formula, but what I'm saying is it's like applicable to so many things. So it's a really good time to be in it.
Yeah. And talking just to delve further into the being a perfect time to get into UX design. These days there are lots of concerns about the disruptive AI tools that are being introduced, right? And some of these tools are really so remarkable in the sense that you just give it a prompt and it's able to create designs, right? So in terms of the future of UX design, could you just speak to our audience, you know, to tell them, you know, what in terms of UX design as it is now, and how it's likely to evolve in the future with the invention of these disruptive tools?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a great question. And, you know, like my answer to this might be, I wouldn't say divisive, but it might not be the most popular opinion. But to me, really, AI, the way I see AI is it's really a tool, right? It's a tool that create more efficient processes, a more efficient way of doing things. I think at the end of the day, what is needed is the people who know even how to input these prompts. What are the prompts? What are the right questions we should be asking? And what is the right way to use these tools, right? At the end of the day, that's still going to be people. And that's still going to be the people with expertise and like obviously with perspective, right? And that's where I think, it becomes more valuable to have diversity in the industry now is using these tools. How can we utilize these tools to make, I guess, more inclusive products, right? And just like more efficient products. So if we think ourselves as the drivers of this tool, and if we look at AI as the car, then I don't think it would be as, I guess, scary. And obviously there's still a lot of uncertainty. Even I have a lot of uncertainty because, who knows when we'll get to a place where AI has full cognition and like emotional growth and all of that and emotional intelligence. Maybe that time's going to come, maybe it's not going to come. But right now, like just looking at right now, a lot of that involved in the decision making on how to use these tools is still human based, right? And that's where I think we can look at AI like that, right? Where it's just, okay, it's actually great because now I can parse through miles and miles of data in minutes. And, to me, if I look at it that way, that makes my job easier. That enables me to actually do more tests, do more research, like grab more data. So it's really just about how are we choosing to integrate AI into our day-to-day, right? And again, it still always falls back to us to come up with what really is the problem. Like, how do we look at these insights, this data with a human lens, right? Because there's still so much that relies on us and how we see the world, right? So I guess that's my take on AI overall.
Yeah, that's really very, very, very good answer, actually. Just saying this as a tool that you can use and to be more efficient and productive in your daily work, that's just the way around it. Like you mentioned, there's a lot of uncertainties. No one knows exactly how much things are going to evolve over time. So, just taking advantage of every opportunity right now and, using it to make us work better and more effectively. Thank you for that beautiful answer. So I'm sure the members of our audience are just wondering at this point, like, what is a typical day for you, like as a UX designer? So can you just like give an idea of, what maybe they are trying to see themselves in the role, right? Just trying to determine or decide whether it is something that they would like to do. So can you just give an idea of what a typical day for you is like as a UX designer?
Absolutely. I guess I would give two different answers here. The first answer is like if we're looking at user experience, a user experience designer, a typical day for a UX designer would be obviously, you could be crafting tests, you could be writing tests, you could be building a strategy on like how to test, or like you could be looking through the data that you receive and how users are interacting with the product, what are their insights, where are they struggling. You could also be working on crafting personas or archetypes. So these are essentially representations of an entire demographic to kind of guide our designs. And probably one of the biggest things is, we talk about user research, we talk about getting all of this data, but, a big part of user experience is also being able to pull that data and create that into visual or tangible solutions, right? And so, that often comes in the shape of like wireframes, sketches, anything really to visualize, this information and creating that hierarchy, making sure that the most, valuable interactions for our users are surfaced in a way that, they are easily able to interact with it, identify it, or find the information that they're doing. So that, that's a lot of the typical stuff that a UX designer revolves around revolves around data and creating visual solutions from it. And a lot of the back end is more strategy and planning of just like, hey, really digging into who your users are and trying to look at what their behaviors are, how, we do all of these exercises. You think that a lot of UX is really just looking at how they interact with the product, but we actually do a lot of exercises of what are the users like outside of the product ecosystem, right? Like what types of activities do they do? Like what would drive them to even start using our product, or what would lead them to our product, and how do they integrate what they get from the product in their daily lives? So it's really getting a holistic picture of who is using our products, and finding ways to craft the I don't want to say the word perfect, but craft the perfect product for them, right? We'll never get perfect, but that's the entire point, right? Like our user basis is constantly evolving, and because of that, as UX designers, you're also going to be looking at trends. You're going to be looking at other products, competing products, and trying to break what they're doing down, right? So it's definitely a lot of research and problem solving. If I were to add to that a little bit, my current role right now is a little bit different in a sense where I guess I'm overseeing user experience as well as visual design, as well as like the content pipeline. So I get to do a lot of the more creative things in addition to the base UX stuff, where I get to try to figure out how how art or how visuals influence user behavior, right? And so like I guess in games, a lot of us play games, and if you've played a game and you've played a game where you're collecting items, for example, and you get a rare item and then like a legendary item, crafting what that visual parody looks like, right? How does a user feel that this is a legendary item versus a rare item, right? What visual cues do we provide the user? What materials do we use for this specific item to make it feel more valuable? So it's definitely digging into a lot of visuals and really how they influence a user's interaction. So that's my typical day will go around a lot of those of just like, hey, how does animation influence our users? How does our content influence users, or how does this button color influence our users? So there's a lot of visuals into what I do. So I guess that's what my typical day would look like specifically.
Yeah, so from what you've said, it appears that research is a very heavy component of UX design, right? And then you talked about being strategy and planning. You also mentioned about having an eye for details, right? And kind of like being creative, knowing what is visually appealing, and being able to pull out information from several users. So user-centered designs, basically, understanding what the users really want, and then being able to apply that. So for our audience, if that is something that you feel like that is your strength, this is something that you want to do, then this UX design is definitely a career path that you should look into, because like Julien has mentioned, there are lots of possibilities in so many industries, like very many industries. So this is something that you want to look into. So Julien, let me ask you, is there a particular personality type that you feel like will function best in a UX role, or is it such that irrespective of a person's personality type? So I'm just trying to now, okay, let me ask the question this way. So someone might feel like, this is something I really like to do, but maybe the person is wondering, maybe I'm not as so creative, or like, is there a particular persona type that fits perfectly into this role, or what do you think about that?
Absolutely not. is my answer. And the reason I say that is a user experience as a field is also pretty wide in itself. You got different facets to user experience, like again, user research, UX strategy, you got wireframing and prototyping. Like you've got more, you can also focus more on the UI side, which is, technically UI is its own field, but it definitely overlaps a lot with UX, right? So if you're more on the creative side, you could look at a career where you're more focused on prototyping and creating mock-ups and working on the UI. But if you're more of, I guess, an analytical type and you like looking at data and facts, then you can focus more on the research, right? Looking at player insights, parsing through, how they interact with your product. And again, if you're also a person who likes observing people, for example, and it's also a great role, because then, usability testing, one of the biggest things is also observing physically how the users behave with your product. Like they could be saying one thing, but they could be interacting with your product a different way. And there is value to dig into that. So personality type, I definitely don't think that is a limiting factor. I would say though, there are specific, I guess, mindsets that you'd want to have if you want to kind of get into user experience. And one thing that I always stress when I talk about user experience is really just probably your first skill, or first, I guess, mindset that you want to have in your toolkit is really empathy. And when I say empathy is being able to just take yourself out of who you are and just look at a problem objectively and look at it through the lens of who you're making the game for, right? So that the more you can empathize and envision yourself in a user's shoes, the more you can make educated assumptions that you can further validate with your users. But it gets you a better starting point, right? Because you're able to have this understanding of who you're making the game for, and you're able to see where they're struggling through their eyes, as opposed to be like, you could easily just disqualify a user's thinking by saying, hey, my user's saying this is super difficult, I think this is super easy. But that doesn't matter, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you think at the end of the day. What matters is what is the data you're receiving, right? And again, empathy takes you a long way in that regard. And obviously the second one, and I think it applies really to any field at this point, but it's really just flexibility / adaptability. And the reason I say that is UX is a growing field. UX has been around maybe 10-15 years. Like the earlier pioneers of UX maybe longer, but UX is still growing in itself as a field, right? And our user bases change. Everyone kind of like evolves, and with that, you would want to be adaptable, right? You would want to be able to evolve with the users. You would, the solution that worked for you last year might not be the same solution that worked for you this year, and you should be okay with that, right? So I think those are probably the two things I would start. People may disagree with me, but I think that's the starting kit, and everything else you can pick up and everything else you can learn. But definitely coming into it, you want to have that. You want to be able to just, hey, I can take my personal bias out of this, and maybe not fully, right? Because that would be very unrealistic, but looking at a problem, I can take my bias out of it and then just look at a problem objectively. I think, that type of mindset would take you miles.
That's so powerful. Empathy and flexibility. And with these two, you can thrive not just in UX but any field. Yeah, like it's really, those skills are really, really very important. And I just hope that someone here is listening, and the person would take action. Like for me, like, this is really very insightful. I'm not even in UX, but these are things that one can even apply to whatever field you're in. So yeah, these are very valuable, important traits for anyone to have to make a success of their careers. So Julien, I'm just asking this question for the benefit of those of our audience who want to get into this field and have no experience. So the question would be, where do I start from? I don't have any experience in UX design or anything like that. How do I break into tech? How do I break into this field?
Yeah, so I guess I would really start by just starting to, like, there is a wealth of information online, and I'm sorry if this is starting to be just like a very generic answer, but like, first step is obviously taking that initiative to really figure out what UX is, right? Like, before even trying to look at education or training or anything like that, first you want to understand what really UX is, right? What's it all about. And the best way to do that is just buy articles. And like, I always recommend articles because I'm a heavy article reader. But just looking at, different articles by the UX Collective, or just type even UX articles or what is UX, you'll get different websites like UX Collective, Interaction Design Foundation, Medium. All of these different websites will be able to give you a pretty good idea of what user experience is. And once you're able to identify that it's something that you want to do, obviously the next step is really, how can you first of all, it's like, how can you get the skills that you need for it, right? I think that, nowadays we're moving into a world where, I'm not saying that credentials aren't important, but like, we're moving into a world where a lot of companies are looking more at skills, right? And like, we have the opportunity to kind of pick skills up within like smaller and shorter courses and kind of, turn that into a career. So, like, looking again where what specific facet of UX you want to explore, and then maybe picking up a course on it. And I guess another thing is, even before that, is really practice. And the reason I say practice, if you're just an aspiring designer, you should be aiming to be creating a design a day, like, whether it's give yourself little problems to solve every day. Like, okay, I'm looking at my Nespresso machine and I think this could be more efficient in what way? And like, if you think it could be more efficient, okay, how can I change that? Mock that up, try to demo it, right? Try to look at the interface that you're dealing with and come up with a solution, or even a website that you use every day, right? Like, you love using this website, but for some reason you just can't seem to find the about page. How would you redesign it, right? Like, how would you apply base UX foundational thinking and create a solution that would actually make that better? So, that practice is definitely important. And again, the third thing is one of the best ways to obviously break into the industry, especially in any design job and UX design, is really having a strong portfolio, right? And you might have all this experience and all of this knowledge, but if you're not able to demonstrate it through your portfolio, through creating a case study, and through just showing how this has positively impacted a product or a user base, a lot of that experience is, you don't get the opportunity to even showcase that experience. So the first step in the door is usually always going to be the portfolio, right? That's going to be your foot in the door of just like, hey, I want you to listen to the experience that I have, but here's what I can demonstrate to show you that I have this experience, right? So definitely big on the portfolio, big on practice, and just self-learning, right? Like, trying to pick up things wherever you can, and then, carving out a path, because there's no one answer to where you can pick up UX credentials or UX education. Like, you could literally take an online course and be able to figure out how to, like, what are the tools that we use, right? But at the end of the day, it isn't really like the base theory or base knowledge that we have or base tools that we have. It's really how we're using this, right? That's what kind of makes each designer stand out, and that's what makes one designer better than the other, is really their understanding of these tools and how they use it and how they apply it to their product. So yeah, that's a very long answer, I guess.
No, I really love your answer, really, because in terms of user design, like, seeing yourself as the user and just looking for ways every day to improve, like you mentioned, no matter the amount of education you have, no matter how many courses you take, how many articles you read, if you don't practice, right, it's like a waste, right? And there's no way you can show a future employer that, okay, I have these skills and this is what I can do. So at the end of the day, after you've read all the courses, you understand, first of all, what the design is, what the UX is all about, what you identify, what area of UX you want to go into, like he mentioned, reading resources, taking courses, and then you now start to practice, right, what you have read and what you have learned from courses and all that. Then just doing it and being able to show your value, which is really very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. that thank you very much for those beautiful answers. Like this is really, really very insightful. And I know that those of our audience that are listening to this talk, they are really, really gotten a lot of value from it already. Just as one of the final questions I will ask is what are the opportunities for growth in this field? Right, because I know someone who is entering into the field will also be thinking of, okay, where can this take me in the next 5, 10 years, 15 years? Yeah. So what are the opportunities for growth? Like I know you mentioned earlier that this field is really an emerging field, is really very versatile and things like that. So do you just want to speak about opportunities for growth in this field?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess opportunities for growth, I think even that answer has changed over the past 10 years. Like as far as user experience go, more and more companies are actually getting user experience up all the way up to their leadership level, right? Like there's more opportunities being carved out for user experience directors, and just as being able to influence not just products, but really businesses as a whole, teams as a whole. So if you look at what that growth ladder looks like, you may start off as a UX designer, but you could specialize specifically in a certain facet of UX. Then you would find yourself going to be like what I'd like to refer as, I guess, a craft expert, right? Where you're focused on specialization and a specific skill set. So you could go into an entire career path of just being a user researcher, right? And focusing on the research and the data. That's an entire career path in itself. You could go the management / leadership route where you're going up into UX management and UX directorship. And then you could also go again full on into, I guess, like the visual side, where you're more focused on being able to prototype, test designs really quickly, turn them into visual solutions. So I guess it really, almost every facet of UX will have its own career ladder. And like right now, I can already, just off the top of my head, think of like 5 different ladders just within the field of UX, right? And I'm sure there's more, because as time passes by and as this field evolves, more and more specialized roles are obviously being shapen, right? Now you get someone who is just specifically looking at how to transfer that data into a visual solution, or you just look at specifically at someone who's even just focused on writing the testing strategy, not even doing the tests themselves or doing the research themselves, but looking at what are the right questions to ask, how do we structure this test, how do we make this test not lead into skewed information. So yeah, I guess that's a very vague answer, but again, we can't really get too specific because of how broad UX has grown as a field.
Yeah, that's really, really very, very encouraging, right? So, there are so many options. If you decide to go into UX, you can even chart your own path from what he said, because this field is evolving, and as you get in, you just try out different things, you find out what you really like, and then you get to forge your own path in this journey. So yeah, it's
actually, Pearl, I did forget one thing, which I think could also be like, because I guess a lot of the audience here like are looking to kind of shift from like PhD roles and kind of expand their career, right? There's also a big, I wouldn't say a big market, but there's also a pretty healthy market for UX consultancy, right? And where why I wanted to bring that in is like maybe within the next kind of 5 years, you could expand your skill set into UX and become an expert, right? But like you could even take that a step further and provide guidance to different companies, startups, bigger companies, or even people who just don't really know what UX is and want to invest in that. And consultancy is a kind of a big thing, because now you're moving to a space where you're not just using UX as a skill set in itself, but then you could also be applying some previous education that you might have, which would actually amplify how you would see UX as a field, right? Like, I'm thinking off the top of my head, if you're in the sociology or you're in the psychology, kind of background like that, there's so much there to really just embrace UX as a field. And, that could, provide a lot of value to like a consultant role. So I thought I'd just like catch that up for you.
Yeah, that is actually very valuable as well, and I really like the part where you added that even irrespective of your background, you can find a way to find relevance in UX, and also now take things a step forward into consulting, not just providing services, but also consulting. This is really, really like this session is really jam-packed with lots of information, very valuable information that's very useful for anyone wanting to break into tech, precisely UX. This is really very valuable information. And I just hope that, you're also gaining as much as I am gaining from this talk. And I'll just give Julien the opportunity to just give us like a roundup now, just takeaway points, for those of us that are looking at breaking into UX. He'll just give us like a just high level summary of, what he has said today. And, and I hope that, this is just like actionable points that you can start doing right now to start your transition into tech.
Absolutely. So I guess I get first thing, just recapping some of the stuff that I mentioned. Take the time to really understand, what this role is, and just take the initiative to try to find any resource that you can,
So
right?
do you have resources that you recommend to our audience, that maybe resources that are beginner friendly, that they can? Do you have any recommended resources?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
I know
there would be a lot.
you mentioned UX collectives or something.
Yeah. So
yeah.
I did mention UX Collective. There's Medium, which I go to for a lot of articles on design. There's the Interaction Design Foundation. You got some big organizations who will have some resources to start with that are very trusted in the UX world. You have Nielsen and Norman Group. You have IDEO. So these are some of the pioneers of UX. So they do have a lot of toolkits to kind of start from, and then you can go into other resources such as Udemy. I'm not going to take YouTube off the list because there is a lot of value on YouTube. If you kind of want to get inspiration on like what people are doing in the UX or design field, you can look at places like Dribble. You can look at places like Behance, where these are more visual tools, and they kind of showcase more of the final products. But these are still great resources to kind of just dig into. And even Pinterest, like I spend a lot of time on Pinterest, and this is a very unorthodox answer, but
well,
but
I was just about saying that.
Instagram is actually a big resource for me, to just find out what people are doing, like what's the latest things people are doing, because there's definitely, we look at it, it's social media, but you can craft your feed to just show you like what the latest and greatest people are doing in the industry, and it's actually a very inspiring space. So those are some of the tools, for sure. I guess going back to I guess like other parting tips I would say is just jump in, get your feet wet. I always say that there's no really harm in kind of trying to figure out what UX is and really identify what it is. Obviously going back to practicing, and like again, just use different products. This probably we don't talk about this enough, but like you're already using all of these apps and all of these programs in a day-to-day basis, right? And so the next step really is like, how can you move away from just using these products to identifying how this product is built and how this product works? So like I love doing that, and I can't advocate for this enough. Almost any game that I play, as I'm playing them, I'm breaking this game down. How was this UI built? What kind of VFX did they use for this? Like what platform did they build this in? Like, is it an easy flow? Start breaking things down. Start looking at things from a, perspective of a user. And, like, I'm not saying that be the user, because that's that would be advertising the wrong thing, but start trying to look at things through the lens of a user, and you'll be able to start seeing how things kind of come together. And I guess what another thing is, if you are going to work on a portfolio in design or UX, one piece of advice that I would always kind of like to impart is think about what industry you would like to break into. That's probably a big thing. I have seen so many cases of people just just applying to a gaming job and they have like a really strong app portfolio, but like there's not a lot of consideration because it does not show that you're willing to kind of shape yourself or sell yourself in a way that is specific to that industry, right? So I feel that there is a lot to be said about crafting custom portfolios. And while it might take more time, it definitely shows the companies that, hey, you're willing to take the time to learn about this specific field and showcase work that is specific to that field. And I'll give an example. Like I there was definitely that interview that I did before that stood out really well, where this person was just like, hey, I don't have any experience working in games, but here's a breakdown I did of blank game. I don't want to say the exact game, but I did this breakdown of this mobile game that I play every day, and I thought it had really bad UX, and here's the solution that I did. And I was just like, this is great, because I know you're here honestly telling me that you don't have experience in game, but I see that you were taking the effort to look into what we do in our field and even try to kind of break that out. And I guess another example is I had an application of a person who wanted to be a UX designer on our team, and she literally tore our UX apart of our game. And I thought that was hilarious, but at the same time I was just like, we want someone like this on our team.
Did she get the job?
I think she did get the job, but I don't know if she hung out a long time. But yeah, like that's just showing that, like, hey, you really want this job and you're willing to take the time to kind of break a certain experience down. So that's I guess like one big advice on the portfolio, and probably lastly, maybe what I think would be the most valuable, is really see yourself as a brand, right? And this might sound very corporate-y, but like see yourself as a brand. And like what I mean by that is, look at every single aspect of who you are as a professional, as a person, as a human being, and see how you can meld that into your brand, into like what you are showing these companies, these employers. And I'm not just talking about work experience, I'm not just talking about hobbies, interests, but like I'm literally talking about your nationality, your background, or even your family background. Like what are the perspectives you can bring to the table? What do you like doing in and outside of work? What are you passionate about? How can you bring your passion into your professional brand, right? And obviously it comes in the experience and all of that, because again, that's really what will make you stand out apart from other designers, right? Like every application, every designer will come with, hey, here's a grad project that I did, here's a case study that I did of a project, and this is how I did the UX for it. And that's great, but that's really, that brings you in comparison with all of the other people applying for that same job, right? But what really makes you stand out is how you infuse you being a UX designer with who you are. And that's kind of what I really want to just impart that, because authenticity is such I guess it's a rare thing in our industry, but it's also such a big thing, right? Like it influences how you fit into a team. It influences how you, I guess, the relationships you build with other people, and again, how a product is shaped with your perspective. So don't fear bringing who you are into how you sell yourself, right? And I think that's actually the biggest asset you have.
Wow, this is just so mind-blowing. Like, wow, like I'm still taking in this last point, right? So after you've done all that you do, don't forget your personality, because that is what makes you stand out. That is just, wow, mind-blowing. Thank you so much, Julien, for your time, for sharing so much valuable nuggets that I'm sure that our audience, will be so excited to hear and implement. For me, I'm always, as we're having this conversation, I just started to just asked myself, how can I apply this to my own career? And already I can see so many ways that I can implement all these advice strategies into my own career path. I'm sure you can also do the same thing or to in your own career paths. So you might be feeling right now, maybe I'm not, UX is not my thing, but irrespective of what your career path is, these are strategies that you can employ into your own career journey and make the most out of it. Thank you once more, Julien, for your time. Thank you for these valuable points that you have shared with our audience. So I hope that this time next week, or next month rather, we'll have another guest speaker come to tell us about another career path. And come back and watch. There's going to be so much more value that you can also gain from all the stories. The more you hear the stories of others, you begin to craft out your own career path. And if you're still in the exploratory phase where you're trying to figure things out, listening to the stories, and that's why we bring the stories, to help you to search, to have, like Julien said, knowing your personality, knowing yourself, and it helps you to be able to evolve and find out which of these paths would be what you want to do. And let's hope that it perhaps UX is not your thing. Let's hope that by next week we'll bring something that will be more of your thing. All right.
Awesome.
So thank you everyone for listening,
and
yeah,
thank you for Higher PhD for the opportunity as well. I'm definitely just super keen to be able to just impart my perspective to everyone. So like if you're thinking to get into UX, then I hope we run into each other in the field at some point in the future.